and welcome to the Metaphysical Perspectives podcast. My name is Derek Condon. I'm joined by Julissa Helms, and we have a action-packed episode for you today. I'm going to kind of slow roll it in as normal, just to make sure that we're connected okay. And
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're excited to chat. We have a lot of things that have happened. I can't remember when our last podcast was.
it's been too long.
Yeah, but Derek went on a couple of trips to Arizona, so we're backtracking to a lot of occurrences and things that have happened leading up to when he left and when he returned. And there's always stuff going on and things that we'd like to share with you just to help share different perspectives of our reality. So,
Yeah, and we have Julissa has a good list of notes there that we're going to go off of about different topics. A lot of things. So I've had a couple trips to Arizona recently, some interactions with different groups and individuals. Lots of exciting stuff to talk about too, as far as the large items that we brought back, big singing bowls, and down below me in the screen, there's an image where you see our copper pyramid frequency area. So we have a huge Tibetan copper bowl, singing bowl we'll talk about, and then also down below, next to the Sasquatch in that image there, a huge new Shungite fountain or water feature that we built as well. So I'm gonna let Julissa take charge and set the direction.
yeah, so if you're local to us, you should come by sometime and check out the pyramids and the fountains and the bowl. It's amazing to stand in and feel that vibration to raise your vibe. But so I wanted to also point out, hopefully we don't have any more mic issues. So you can see that we have these headsets on. So hopefully we're not having to deal with the echoing or the reverberation. So I think sound check went okay. So we should be good.
Yeah, and I just put that in chat as well on YouTube. Said, hey, how's the audio sound? So because we're jumping through different mics, as you can tell, sometimes we have Yeti mics, but we're gonna try the headphone ones and see how that goes.
Yeah, and we always have techie stuff happen here. Everything's energy, and our electronics, the lights, they have definitely shown us that around here at Mystical Wares, more so than ever before in my life. I've always had techie stuff happen, but it was never so blatant and in your face as it
Oh
is here at
yeah,
Mystical Wares. So
yeah. It doesn't matter if it's lights or audio recordings or computers or fans or whatever. The energies are pretty extreme.
but it's a lot of times it's not like we already know, but like for other people, it's like their confirmation. So it's good for us to remember that, when things are happening, sometimes it's not for us to see. It's like we already know, or there's big energies happening, but somebody else needed to see whatever it was that happened for
Mhm.
them.
Yeah, some of it's like examples, so it'll be around us, and they'll maybe Jalissa and I will be out here talking or chatting with another customer or something, and then you never know what's going to happen, be it the lights turning on or off. But it's nice because other people get that example that emotions, energies, conversations, people, all the above, can have an effect on electronics. Um, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so Derek, when you were in Quartzsite, was it the first time? Because he's gone on a couple trips. So I think it was the first trip that you went on, and you were in Quartzsite,
The first trip was
Quartzsite?
Quartzsite, Arizona, when we were at
Yeah.
the what's called a powwow rock and gem shows.
So you had said that something happened there when you were going into one of the booths and something caught your eye. Uh,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, good. So and we've done a couple trips, so let me spark my memory here. But again, it was Quartzsite, Arizona. So they're every year. So if for those that haven't maybe heard this podcast or us talk about the shows before, there's different rock and gem mineral shows that happen in Arizona. This particular one happened in Quartzsite, Arizona. It happens every year. There's other ones in Tucson we go to. We may get into that later. Um, but at this show, so I guess I can give you a visual. So it's just hundreds and hundreds of vendors that are selling different types of rocks, gems. Some are polished, some are raw, some are just different places, different items. And so, and then just imagine, vendors side by side for just aisle after aisle under just many acres of the desert out in Arizona. So that's what's called the Rock and Gem shows, or powwow is one of the shows. So this year at one of those shows in Quartzsite, actually it was at the beginning of my time there. So we showed up at the Quartzsite show, and I was walking down one of the first aisles. And again, there's vendors peppered throughout. and you just see the card tables or whatnot. So I came up on this one individual as a gentleman. He's probably my age, so in 50s or so. And we were talking about the different types of items he had on his table. And I'm just going to kind of skirt over the part that doesn't really, tie in or align with what we're talking about. But this individual also happened to be a by the end of the conversation, I found this part out. He's a doctor, he's a geologist, all sorts of titles, and works at some college. I forget what even state it was. He had mentioned. Um, so long story short, we got into a conversation, and him being a geologist, and me having a background in rock hounding and gold prospecting. So a lot of tie-ins to minerals and gems and whatnot. So we chatted for a while. And then and also if there's parts I leave out, Jalissa, you know me, so remind me, please, if I've already mentioned this part. So I'm gonna kind of zoom around now, because as you mentioned, this was maybe 2 months ago now, and then I had a month pause and then went back to Tucson, Arizona. So I'm just trying to remember back. But anyway, so as I go down the one aisle after interacting with this individual, I come down the second aisle, and then lo and behold, I find out he's kind of pointing at me because I notice it catches. I just feel an energy draw for some reason. So I'm walking, and I'd say there's probably a 30-foot gap on either side of just vendors that are just again lined up, peppered through each other. So I can go in either row, and I'm just looking at various rocks, crystals, and things, and I'm just again follow my intuition. So I feel an energy. I feel like somebody's looking at me. So I glance over, and let's just for visual, it's on the right hand side as I'm on my right hand side. So I notice the same guy that was probably 100 yards away on another aisle just minutes before. So evidently he had kind of, and we had talked. Let me kind of back up. So in the first aisle where I was speaking to him, I had mentioned mystical wares and rock and gem shop, and I was a prospector and whatnot. So we chatted for a few minutes, um, which drew his attention to me, I should say. And then we had the interaction, and my spider senses or intuition went off a little bit at that time, but I kind of just brushed it off and went on. So then we're back at the next aisle that I was just talking about, and I saw him, and he was standing there with his wife. So they evidently had two vendor spots where they had different items. And when I got to the second spot, there were so just think card tables laid out. There was maybe 8 of them with different display cases on them in this case. So at the first spot, some rough material. At the second vendor place, where as I found out it was his wife, and he was over there again. So he ran around and was over there by the time I got there. And I glanced as I was looking through his other items and rocks and crystals. I noticed in a display case, it kind of caught my attention, as it always does. I'll follow my intuition. I'll just feel an energy pull for some reason. So I'll listen to the instincts. I looked over, and that's where I saw again in this glass case a little dollar bill, so a $1 bill, U.S. currency, um, folded up into a little triangle, set right between some other jewelry and items he had, emphasizing the pyramid with the eyeball on the back, the all-seeing eye. And that was literally folded again into a little triangle on display in the middle of the case as a little advertisement or acknowledgement. So when I actually saw this, the individual I was with, I just said, and I kind of saw that, and I looked up at him, and his wife had never spoken to me still, and she never did. And I saw him, and they were basically just watching me look at the different items, and evidently to see if I picked up on that, and I did. So when I looked at it, I told the individual with me, I'm like, well, and I glanced over, and there was a group of people around me. So I'd say, I don't know, 8 or 10 other customers, none of which I knew, that were shopping there as well. And again, glass case down on the table. So I looked down at it, saw that, um, looked up at those two individuals, and then I'd mentioned the one person with me. I said, tapped on the case, and I'm not a real shy individual for those that know me, especially in circumstances like this. And I'm not a fan of the club that ties themselves to those images. So as that happened, I said, okay, well, this here alone, again, I'm kind of raising my voice at this time, not making a big scene, but not being shy either. So I tap on the case and I connect eyes. So I have them look at me. I'm like, this tells me that we don't want to buy anything from here. And neither one of them said anything. And again, everybody's standing around looking at me because I'm right in front. So I'm real clear, and I point right above their folded up dollar bill with the eyeball and pyramid on it, stating, not a fan of this. This says you don't want anything to do with it, with the energy attachment. And at that time, I was starting to get a little um, energetic, not heightened. And so I'll put it this way: energy sensitives would have picked up on it, but not actual individuals, because I wasn't like raising my voice or anything. But I was acknowledging that, getting heightened, and then those two individuals, without they didn't say anything to me at the time. They just stepped back from the table, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet to step off, and then stopped their interaction with me once I started calling them out on the symbol. And then that's just from the 3D perspective, but energetically, their booth and the energies that they were representing and had there could be perceived by I think most people. And they were trying, long story short, they were trying to draw off the energy pull um, of the energy sensitives that were there. So different people have feelings and they don't necessarily tie it onto what's pulling their energy. So sometimes it's kind of like a lure, putting symbols or different symbols in areas, and often people won't know why. They'll just feel the energy, and then that's that other energy, in this case, I'm not a fan of, can get in their energy field and have an effect on them. So that's why I made such a display of what was going on and acknowledging it and acknowledging I wasn't a fan of it. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed. Remind me if I forgot. But add on from that. So after I leave and we decide, and again, we announce we're not buying anything and why we're not. And others people walked away as well. Once I acknowledged that, it was almost as if others didn't notice, and it was on display pretty clearly. The display case, the glass one I'm talking about, was probably 2 or 3 foot across, completely see through, and it was right in the middle, folded up to grab your attention. But for whatever reason, it still was being just lost on many people until I talked about it, drew some energy, and then they realized it, nodding heads, and they went on. What I found as I went down that same aisle, I don't know, 50 feet or so, the only other, or the only one in that, and there's lots of shows in Quartzsite that happen at this time. So at this particular show we were in, with these groups of vendors, a couple hundred vendors, I was the only Shungite dealer. So, and I didn't know that, but down the aisle, just happened to be as you pass by the various Illuminati symbols and that from these vendors, um, you just happen to come up on the Shungite people. So automatically, whether people knew it or not, they were being energetically cleansed by Shungite, which is one of the effects it has of excess or overage energies. So it wasn't lost on me that it was, and it was not random that the only Shungite dealer was going to be just down from these other individuals. So that was just something worth noting. There was probably a whole lot more to it, but of course, as I get further away from that, it's hard to remember all the specifics. And I don't know, was there
Well,
anything?
well, no, with that, it's just like how tricky. Because like,
Hmm.
I can remember times like shopping at places and being drawn somewhere, don't know why you're drawn, and you just start browsing around, you end up buying something. So it's like, um, I know that here at our store with like some vendors, I can see how they like, I guess in a way, bless their table or like hope that people will come through. And it's like, but it's not like that's just such like a schemy way of doing things to
It
like put
is,
a dollar bill
but it
instead of just
works.
loving it and
Uh-huh.
appreciating it and like this will be, going to where it belongs and, doing it with love instead of like, how can we lure them in? Just,
Yeah, and that's what they were doing. They were, hoping that nobody would notice it, kind of thing, and or be as disruptive as I was, because again, I'm not real shy. Yeah, and they definitely knew what I was putting out. They were not, and he was again, he made a big deal on the aisle before he realized, I'll just word it this way, what type of individual I was. We'll just say aware. And we hadn't even talked about the energies that were around the items yet that you could see. Because as soon as I started perceiving through my metaphysical senses, chakras, because then that's when you get your energy sensitivity, your intuition, different things. And then I started perceiving I don't know, the toroidal fields, the fluctuations of energy around the items he was selling, because I'm not on all the time. That's overwhelming. I mean, kind of, but not in every level. So if I slow down and decide to perceive the frequencies or energies, it was definitely a pull, a draw, and they were trying to get their different rocks and gems and minerals, again, into people's hands, and they had an add-on frequency to them. So yeah, I wasn't real impressed to see that. And I could see how those items could easily get in somebody else's hands, and then
yeah.
they've tainted other items and
And
objects.
it's just a spiral of this energy that continues. And it's so unfortunate how things are taken, like symbols are taken, and they become like distorted. Same with words and our
Hmm.
language. But, like I grew up hearing about the evil eye. Like I never really paid attention to the symbols on the dollar bills or anything like that. and I actually never saw like the little eyes that people use to protection against the evil eye. So like our culture was just a little bit different, but it's like, yeah, that energy is real and it's not always put in a bad way. So growing up, like you could get sick with what would be called el ojo, or the evil eye, the eye, if you're being admired too much. So like babies or children, if somebody's like admiring them, like, oh, they're so cute, like you should go touch them and just to like let them know that you're not sending bad energy. But so I don't know like what that energy exchange is by touching, but in culture it was like, oh, just
I
if you're
don't
looking at
know.
a baby, like, oh, don't, you can't just look at them and be like, oh, how cute. You need like tap their arm and be like, oh, you're so cute, and
Hmm.
share that love, so that they won't get sick. So if you're being admired and too much attention, it can make someone sick. So,
Oh, okay. Interesting. No, I hadn't heard
yeah.
it put that way.
But so backtracking, I guess before
Mhm.
Quartzite, we had a class here. It was Shungite and Energy Tools, and that class did. Oh yeah, that one was recorded.
Oh,
So
it's on the Metaphysical Perspectives podcast channel. I
yes,
think it's our last class we did, or
was that?
podcast in
It's been a
class.
while. Like we're so thrown off with our dates. Oh, and
Mhm.
really quickly before I forget, if anybody has any questions, or you can chime in at any time, I'm in the chat and I'm following along. So I will go ahead and um, make sure that we're able to bring up anything that's put in there. Uh, so yeah, feel free to chime in at any time. But the Shungite and Energy Tools class before he left to Quartzsite, that was really interesting. There was a lot of, there's always, like I said, a lot of energy things that happen here, but right in the middle of class, or I don't think it was in the middle, it was like at the beginning, we started having helicopters hovering over our building. And I was like, oh, what is going on out there? You know, we're right next to a river. So I was like, uh-oh, is somebody needing to be rescued out there? Or what's going on? We have a hospital not too far away, but there shouldn't have been helicopters hovering here unless something was happening.
Especially above our building.
Yeah, so it was just
Mhm.
like so loud, but Derek, he was just going on through class, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how is he not noticing? I'm over here like so distracted by the helicopters and still trying to like keep going through class and going through the motions and trying to remember to talk about whatever our topics were and the stuff we were having. And Derek, oh, we've had some comments about the recording, about some things that we're seeing in the recording as well.
Oh, of the class.
But
Mhm.
where we're sitting in the classroom, it was like the Sasquatch area in the picture, like we're sitting right in front of that. So to my left, I would have to look past Derek. There's a mirror on the wall. And so I was caught my eye that it looked like somebody was like a reflection in the mirror, like somebody was walking by, but nobody was walking by because we can like full view of the store, the back area of the store. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? Helicopters. I'm seeing all this stuff. I'm so distracted, but we were able to do the class, and I don't think it was too obvious how bad I was distracted.
No, not by me. As I start to ramble, yeah.
I don't know. You did great. And then afterwards, again, I forgot about the helicopters. I don't know, because it was just like, okay, keep pushing through. What's going on? And then eventually I was like, what was up with the helicopters? And he's like, what helicopters? I'm like, how did you not notice the helicopters?
Oh, yeah. I get distracted by so much though that that would be the least of the distractions.
Yeah, yeah, it was loud. I actually, you can hear it on the recording too.
And
The
that,
yeah.
yeah. Maybe we'll have to note the time so people can. And this isn't the first time this has happened either. So I've got, I don't know how many examples. And I won't get too much in the specifics of it, or bore you with the thing. But out where I go hiking in the Cascade Mountains out here for years, um, and helicopters following. So long story short, when I go out there into the wilderness and hiking, and often I'm alone, not always. I'll go out there and I'll sometimes gift Sasquatch people, or I'm out there just doing energy work, or just focusing, or just chilling out, whatever the case is. And this has happened for years. And I've got other stories over my house what happens, but I don't know why, but helicopters and or sometimes fighter jets will follow me out or show up while I'm out there. And it's not like you're just on a trail and, oh, a fighter jet goes by, they must be focusing on me. No, it's painfully obvious when they'll come across and just hover above you multiple times over different spots on the trail where they can see you. And I have an example where I was with another person. And again, we're just far out in the middle of nowhere, many, many miles out on this hike. And then we'll have fighter jets that will fly over, and they would fly over, not just fly over, but two of them over right above each other. So crossing over upside down, so low to the tree line, because this is a forested area for those that don't know here in the Cascades. So they'd have to wait till I was in a certain open area enough, a patch where there's a patch, and then they'd fly over, cross over us upside down, and we could actually see the face of the pilots. So these trees can't be too tall, um, flying over us, acknowledging us. That happens many, many times. It's happened that way to where it's extreme. Or if I've had examples where I'll kind of, I don't know, hunker down and hide out if I'm alone, where I'm trying to, and again, gifting Sasquatch, and I don't know if they're trying to see if a Sasquatch is going to walk up on me. I don't know their actual plan, but more often than not, when I am out there, I'm getting followed, or again, just choppers. It's been over my personal residence. I lived in a city named Cedro Woolley here for some time, and for at least a year, every single night we'd have a helicopter above our house at certain time frames and just kind of hover there for several hours. Um, I'm actually a retired correctional officer as well. This one's going to sound crazy, and I don't know how much I've talked about it, but I was so when I was an officer, a prison guard, I was actually on the perimeter patrol, it's called. So I had a vehicle um, with weapons, and I was the guy outside on the outside of the fence, the outer perimeter. So if anybody got over or whatnot, I was the first one you encountered. So I was out there past the lights and whatnot, and I didn't know it was a thing, but I would hear helicopters coming from, we'll just say further away, kind of, if you're local, you'll understand the Mount Rainier direction, so kind of southerly. And I was in Monroe, Washington, working at the Monroe Correctional Complex. I guess there's no reason not to announce the names. And I would hear the helicopters, and I would pull over, and it was at nighttime, so I worked the graveyard shift, so it'd be 2, 3 in the morning, something like that. And I'd wonder, why are there helicopters? And I would know that I'm ex-military as well, so I'm familiar with different types of choppers and whether they're military or Blackhawks or whatnot, flying over the prison perimeter coming on. And then I would notice from the lights, because it would be really dark nights, that in this example, there were three helicopters. You could only see lights on two of them, and there would be such a gap between. So, what I'm saying here is on the middle helicopter, there was no sound, none whatsoever. I would see the first helicopter come in, and because of the situation of where I was at in the vehicle, I could see sometimes the moonlight behind the helicopter and see through the canopy or whatnot. They were really low, less than 100 feet. I mean, so you feel it all as well. They'd border, and then I would realize, wait a minute, I'm only hearing, sometimes there's two choppers, sometimes three, but eventually I picked up on there were no lights on the middle helicopter on either one, and I could only tell because the moon would black out, and I'd go, oh, there's another helicopter, until they got close, and I'd realize there was no sound coming from it. Some type of stealth helicopter. And I don't have much more to the story than that, other than that's happened many times, um, as I would find myself out in these extreme conditions or whatnot, or late at night. And I had no idea there were silent helicopters, how the thing was even hovering. And what I meant, and I actually had that on, I don't have the video here. I actually had video at the time. Don't know how they did it, but nose to tail of the helicopters, and there were three. They couldn't have been, and again, I have a clear visual of them, how close they were, less than 10 feet apart. I don't even know how that was possible either, because you'd think they'd have to have a longer distance. But there's silent helicopters out there, so that was interesting too. And I mean, I can go on and
Maybe
on in these stories, but
it's like the Prius of helicopters.
it must
Oh, my-
be. I mean, the whole rotor, you could see the helicopter, so it just didn't make sense how it was so silent. So if you hear those stories out there, they're legit, they're real. Heck, there's even been what they call UFOs over the prison, but we're talking about helicopters and stuff now. So yeah, I'm guessing U.S. military. I don't. Oh, and they were unmarked, so completely black helicopter. And this happened for several years. I was a correctional officer at that prison. It's a maximum security prison for nearly 16 years, and this just happened to one degree or another, different ways throughout the years. Definitely heightened up close to my retirement time when I was leaving the prison, where I would see and experience a whole lot more. So yeah, and I can't be the only one because that was the middle of granted the middle of the night, but it was Monroe, Washington. So we're not talking about 100 miles out in the boonies. So yeah, it's unusual. And again, I'll never know why exactly, but just many experiences with be it helicopters or fighter jets or whatnot. So yeah.
I think a lot of it too is that we're so distracted. People are so distracted that they don't even notice the things that are strange
Hmm.
and not normal. Like um, after our class with the helicopters, I was searching our news to see what was going on here locally to see why the helicopters were hovering. Like, were they searching for someone? What was going on? I couldn't find anything. Maybe somebody else can if they figure that out. Um, but another thing with helicopters, so was at Walmart one day and I told Derek about this, and it was after that class. So I guess when things come into your attention, it's like it stuff happens more frequently or often, or something else happens with that to come into your awareness, I guess. But I was at Walmart and I was by myself. I was getting my kids' shoes, but I was sitting there looking at shoes, and all of a sudden I hear helicopters hovering. So here are Walmart. There is a urgent care clinic and medical clinic right next door. They must have a helicopter pad. So I was like, oh, maybe that's why they were hovering or right in that area. But regardless, so I was at Walmart and I wasn't wearing a mask, but a lot of people around me were. And I was like, when they're hovering, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to feel like anxiety, like anxious. And I'm like, I know it's not me because this helicopter is just sitting up above us and I hear it and I feel it. And I was like, okay, trying to shake that like anxious feelings away. I'm like, maybe it's somebody in there that they're having to transport. I don't know. But so I was like, okay, whatever, get this anxious feeling away. It's just the helicopter. Keep doing my shopping. And I was like, that feeling was still there. And I was like, maybe it's somebody around me looking around. I'm like, I don't know, is anybody else feeling this? And so in Walmart, you have all the electronics there, you have all these lights, you have the music playing, a lot of different frequencies. And also next to this clinic and the helicopter, I think they're still kind of hovering. But then it was like the helicopter went away and the building, it was like a pressure of energy. So it's like my sinuses started like feeling swollen, my throat like kind of swollen and tightened. And I was like, oh, what is this? Okay, hurry up and finish shopping, get out of here. And I think it was, I felt that way for a good at least a mile drive. And it was like a line of like, oh, the pressure's off. Like, oh, I was like in this zone of pressurized atmosphere. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that?
Oh yeah, that's happened to me, and I know what you're talking about. As you were just explaining that, I don't know how to explain that either, but I'll just call it remote perceive, so I can have the feelings that happened then the time happen now. And there's actually a pause, even a pause in sound.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how to explain that one, but that's what happened there as well. So, but you'll feel the pressures, the frequencies. Many of us will, but often, and this isn't some big helicopter or military talk we're having. We're just giving you examples. Of, hey, pay attention to this stuff because it's not random all the time. There's synchronicities, and sometimes there's more to the story. And in this case, and who knows what they were doing, but they were actually sending a frequency, a form of energy. I mean, they could have been trying to, who knows what. I mean, in that area. And I've seen that before as my ear starts ringing right now, which then, of course, tells me there's more as well. Um, so, who knows what was going on. But again, pay attention to that. And if you find yourself in those circumstances to where, hey, it's gathered your attention because you're hearing that sound too much or you're feeling that whoosh of energy, um, maybe get into your subtle thoughts or intuition, listen to your gut instincts, spider senses, and some more input is going to come through. So there's again more to the story. So stay open to that. But no, it's no joke that whoever they are, but different groups will come around and again project different frequencies. Who knows if they're trying to widen this up or if it's some scanning device? I don't know. But there's no avoiding the frequencies, especially as you become more heightened or your perception levels heighten. Again, you start working on chakras, your intuition and stuff like that. You'll feel those squeals and squeaks, not just hear them in your head. Um,
Yeah, even if it wasn't done like intentionally
mhm.
with like sending out energies, like as a conspiracy theory, that like if they're just none of that, it's because all these frequencies are not healthy for us. Like
Oh,
certainly
no.
like
No, I can actually give a little more of the story. When I spoke quickly on the Cedro Woolley one, which is a nearby city here, for those that know where I lived, actually we had the neighbors that would come out, and the helicopter deal I was talking about, where they would just hover above our houses for several hours every single night. We started hearing abduction stories, and they'd be talking ET and alien abductions, the neighbors, um, and So what I'm also kind of alluding to is it wasn't a helicopter anyway. That's what we saw sitting up there, and this is more to the story that I don't know how much I got into. It wasn't a helicopter, but I'll tell you what, if you go outside and look, that's sure what you saw was just a unmarked US helicopter just sitting there for hours hovering. And you can hear this one. So this wasn't a silent one like the one I was talking about, the prison. And then all of a sudden we talked to neighbors as we got to know them, and we hear for years abduction stories. I don't know how much I've let out about the real drama that happened on that property when we first got there.
Mm,
Do you know what I'm alluding to
mm,
here? Okay, I don't know if we want to get into all that or not.
mm.
So, lots of stuff happens. So I guess the bigger thing here is just to pay attention to that stuff and, you know, perceive your environment, talk to people, have experiences. There's stuff happening out there. It's a whole lot more interesting than we may think it is.
Sorry, I think I let some people down by not talking about it right now. But we do have another class coming up that it might be better suited
No
for.
problem. No problem.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
so it'll come up at
Oh yeah.
some point.
No, no problem.
Well, speaking of like the frequencies that these let out, I don't know how much you looked into it. I know I put it into your attention about like the satellites falling. So I guess we have been having some big fireballs uh, being seen in our sky, things falling from the sky. And I guess SpaceX, is that what it's called?
Hmm.
They had launched some satellites and they weren't I don't, I guess something with the solar flares might have knocked them out of their orbit and hadn't, I don't know. Do you know anything
Oh
else?
yeah, I know a little bit. I don't think it wasn't all solar flares. I don't know how much you want to get into the story of specifics. An array of satellites, different numbers. Long story short, you can actually get on a website and look at the SpaceX satellites, and it look like a bunch of white dots kind of shooting through the sky at different times of the night in different areas. So again, you can track all this stuff. And I think what she's talking about is they're claiming, and there was heightened solar flare activity here recently while this was happening, but that often happens. But some of these things are getting kind of shoved out of the or shoved out of the upper atmosphere into the lower atmosphere and then burning up and whatnot. So that's why we're seeing the fireballs. Some of it's intentional. I don't know that they're putting any of that out there, and they're not all. I guess I can't get into too much specifics, but all the satellites aren't doing just what they're saying they're doing. But I think we all knew that anyway. So there's lots of stuff happening from these satellites up there, because we all tend to think when we talk about satellites, we all just imagine transmitters for telecommunications or something like that, or cameras for surveillance. Oh no, there's a whole lot more that happens on those things. But of course, that's what they have in the common knowledge out there. So when we think satellite, oh, that's all we're talking about. No, there's a lot more going on. So some of those were a little more nefarious, so they got shoved out of their orbit and burned up.
Hmm.
Not all by humans either. So there's many moving parts to this reality. Sometimes we call them ETs, galactics, others, um, and wherever you fall in on that, there's lots of groups, and sometimes they'll stick their hand in the mix and muck with things.
Good sometimes.
Exactly.
Like Earth
Exactly. In
needs
this
help.
case, good job.
Help us out, please.
Hmm.
So speaking of SpaceX, I actually saw them go by last year around this time. I think it might have been springtime, and I shared it in our Facebook group. But when that happened, um, it was like they went by really fast, and it was just like a couple football fields length of different lights that you could see. And it's like, holy cow, what the heck is that? And I'm like, oh, it must be satellites. I'm like, oh yeah, I had heard something about like these satellites going up, but I didn't know that they were going to be so low. It could have been like airplanes like flying by because it was so fast and low to us. And it just like from one side of the sky to the next very quickly and got it on video. And then after seeing that, I looked it up and come to find out we have a facility in Redmond, Washington here. I don't know if it was like the first
Oh.
facility where I don't know if they actually do the launching here, but if
Hmm.
it's where they build the stuff, because I mean we have Boeing, so they build the
Sure.
airplanes. So um, I guess we're building satellites here or something.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, but I haven't looked at it recently, so I know that they have a lot of test. Oh, what are they called? Like, what are the internet Wi-Fi modems? So,
Hmm.
like test modems. That's not what it is. I can't remember what it's called, but in people's houses, like in the Seattle area. So they're testing out like how to use those satellites in people's homes,
Oh,
like that
okay.
are, yeah.
I didn't know that. Huh.
I'm like,
Okay.
I just
Interesting.
I think
Yeah.
about our 5G and smart meters and how just the frequencies are so unhealthy for us, and then we have those things also being tested out, and
Well, yeah, and all
yeah,
those things we're talking about work on the 5G or the millimeter wavelength, which is the same one water molecules. Guess what we're made of? Water. So is our environment. All programmable crystalline structures. So yeah, that's what's being mucked with out there.
yeah, insane.
Hmm.
Um, let's see, what else? Oh, well, I guess I talked a little bit about seeing some stuff in the mirror that wasn't actually physically there in our classroom. But one day, Olivia and I, we were getting the classroom space ready for drum circle, and I think you were gone, or you were just coming back that day or something from Arizona. And as Olivia and I, we're getting things set up for a class after drum circle, and we're standing there talking about stuff, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the pendulums moving. So we have a area with all our pendulums going, and I'm like, just standing there watching them, but also listening to Olivia. And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm waiting for the pendulums to stop moving or to see if somebody else had moved them and like walked away." But we have like 5 different, like,
Upright pendulum stands, so they're
yeah, the
actually
stands.
able to sit there and hang kind of like this on their own.
And so out of the 5, it was just one stand, and there was a few of them in that stand that were moving. So after Olivia, we're done chatting, we're like, she looks at them, she's like, "Oh yeah, I see them moving." And we're just still sitting there talking, and we look over, they're still moving. And I'm like, "Let's go over there, see why they're moving." And it's like, okay, we look up, are the vents making it move? No, the vents aren't able to push the air in that direction where it's located. It's like, okay, well, if somebody walked by, they should be done moving by now. And so we're like, we don't have a watch on at the time, but it's like, okay, well, let's see how long we're going to sit here for them to stop moving. And they weren't going in the same direction. Some of them were, going this way, some of them were circling. And it's like they just kept going, and we're just like, okay, we're done sitting here trying to wait for them to stop. So moved on.
And they were
Something
all
else.
different rocks, minerals,
Yeah.
crystals of different types. Some are shungite, some are crystals, and oh yeah, and of course those pendulums are picking up on the energies in the environment, sort of thing that we're swinging by. We have to try and get some recordings of that too, like we
Yeah.
were talking about at night.
That'd be cool. But it was funny that it was just like one of the stands.
Mm,
Like the rest of them were
yeah.
just like didn't want to play along. But then I think after we were like, oh, looking at the other ones, like, why aren't you moving? Then some of them started moving. And then, oh, we ended up, there was a customer that was like, what are you guys doing? We're like, oh, we're waiting for these pendulums to stop moving. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Like, yeah,
Oh yeah, of course, energy goes where your attention
yeah,
so is. So I'm sure there's another way of wording that, but oh yeah.
yeah. And that customer, because we were there for a little bit of time,
Sure.
she walked away and then she came back a little bit later. And when she had come back, like, I think it was a rose quartz one, just like spin, like it just spun. You could see the price tag on it just spin. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
fun
it's
stuff.
interesting when they're that way because they are all hanging there. So they're in a certain display rack that, I can't really show you right now, but they're all hanging there. So, and there's again, not events, as Julissa mentioned. So it's not like a bunch of air flowing on it or people running by, and that wouldn't have done it anyway. It would take more weight than that. These aren't exactly feather light pendulums or, several ounces each. So it takes more than a person walking by to make them swing. Oh, yeah, that's interesting to see. Lots of interesting things in the store.
We always have so much stuff happen here. There was something that happened before you left your second trip to Arizona. I have no idea. Um, so the night before you had left to Arizona, this last trip, I had the kids with me. So I was getting them into the Jeep or into the car, and as I was getting my daughter in, my son was going around. I was like, "Oh, be careful," because there was a car next to us that was about to back out. And I was like, "Oh, be careful." And I was like, "Oh, hurry up and get in," because I don't know if the car saw him.
Mhm.
And thankfully, he got in quickly. But then they back out and they backed up into our parking lot light post. Bad. Do you kind of remember what happened?
I remember saying.
So as that happened, I'm like, oh, good thing. It was very quickly, of course. As my son got in, I was like, oh, thankfully he got in, got my daughter in, closed the door, check. And like the light post is like swinging. I'm like, uh-oh, that's not good. They hit it pretty good. So I look through our doors. We have our front doors are glass, so you can and double doors, so you can see through. And I see Derek standing there with customers and his hands up. And I was like, "Ah, do I interrupt him talking to customers and helping them?" And I look back and I'm like, I gotta go interrupt him. So because I didn't want to interrupt what was happening with the customers because it's really important that people have their moments and have this happen confirmations, like I had said earlier. So I was like, Derek, somebody just ran into the light post. And so he was like, sorry. And then he goes, checks them out. They're okay. And then goes back to talking. And I left with my kids. So the next day, I come back and I think Nat was like sweeping the floor. And she was like, do you remember if these floorboards were like this? And there's like a little gap between the floorboards. And I'm like, I haven't really paid attention to the floorboards. I'm like, I know I've swept them, but I haven't looked that closely to see if there is that gap. And she was like, well, last night when the light post was hit, Derek comes back and is, flinging his energy. He was standing there and he was like, noticed the floorboard and that there is a gap. And I'm like, I don't know if like all the energy that had happened could have caused that. That would be a really big thing that would have happened. But she was told me that when I came in and interrupted you, I guess the people were talking about something not very good. And I was like, oh, well, good that I interrupted because when I was outside at that moment, I was like, oh, I hesitated. Do I interrupt him? And then decision, yes, go get him. And I didn't want to interrupt, but I was like, well, good that I did because sometimes when you start talking about things that aren't good, all that negative energy, whatever it was, it the information's already come across to Derek or to us. It doesn't need to keep going because it's just giving it more energy. So it's like, oh, good. I'm glad that it was able to be stopped. Derek was still able to do that, but it was like all that stuff happened at, I guess, really negative energy.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And when she talks about my hands up, usually I'm doing some kind of energy work or something. For those that don't know, um, and then felt like a pocket of energy in there, so like an implosion of energy. And we're talking about like wooden floor planks or slats or something is what I don't even know the gap that ended up being in there. I don't know, eighth of an inch or so, noticeable gap to where they almost shrunk or something, and that was happening right in that area, sort of thing. Um, and then, yeah, there's, synchronicities aren't lost on us around here, especially. So if it occurs to you, there's probably a reason for it and all the players involved. And then I did come back in and finish the energy work
Mhm.
on with the individuals and whatnot. So, oh yeah, a lot of that time. So when we talk about energy work, one thing to get from this is it's not separate from the physical, the metaphysical. It's all connected. So these energies on all levels affect all of us. So it's something to think about. And we're all in them.
Um, I guess from that we can go into a thing that happened recently here at the fair. Do you want to?
So much happens at these fairs. We're talking about metaphysical fairs that we have here within Mystical Wear store. We bring in, a dozen to 15 vendors. Which
Well,
circumstance?
uh, we had a individual, so I think we're in here, and Maureen came and said that someone looked like they were having an episode out in the parking lot, and their partner, their fiance, was here in the store during a fair, but that individual was in the parking lot and hadn't actually come into the building. So Derek went to go check it out and see what was going on, and
Yeah, I
uh,
can tell you a little bit more to that one too. What she's talking about is also, and this was just a current, again, fair we had here recently, and what it was, two girls came with a male friend who's outside. I think I know where to fall in on this. So the two girls came in. They got to walk around the fair, and again, some people hearing the story noticed this other individual outside having what appeared to be some issues. So he had his arms were swinging, were flailing here and there all over the place. He was refusing to come inside, just kind of walking through the parking lot, and he was chatting with himself. So I had a quick interaction inside, and again, if I forget too much of the story, let me know. But somehow or another, the word got to me, so I went outside Actually, that's right. I was in my office, so someone came and got me, alerted me. There's somebody outside, maybe having some problems. That's about all that was said to me, and I don't know anything more. So I start heading outside, and then I see the individual. So I begin perceiving him, and then seeing the energies and entities around him, that all the energy interaction happening. So he was having, I don't like to put what the medical field would diagnose people with. So he was just having energy issues. He was having, and it looked like he would be ripping energies off him. He's literally flailing his hands like that, and different, I guess we would term it convulsions and whatnot. I don't know how that would be termed. So we were chatting, um, and I'm trying to think about, I gotta again watch what I say, how much I put out here.
Yeah, because we want to keep it, somewhat private, but we feel that some of the information is good to put out there so people have a better understanding of the world around us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then actually, so I can kind of jump forward and back. And so this individual had been found himself in some compromising energetic situations previously that allowed these excess or overage or energies not in alignment with him to be around him. And I'm kind of speaking around things here, but I think most listening will know what I'm getting at. So there were energies and entities not in alignment with his higher self. So as I saw that, I went out there and I had Shungite with me, which is a mineral that's a really good earthing or grounding mineral. Again, many listening are probably familiar with that. We've done shows on it. So I went out there, chatted with him, and this individual was actually having such heart pain and energy issues that he thought he was having a heart attack. He literally told me if these energies were not around him and individuals that were chatting with him, and these were unseen ones, that he was going to die. And he was 100% convinced of this. So we were chatting different levels. You know, I how do I put it? Generate love energy. You can do it lots of different ways, heart brain coherence, and just set that frequency in there. So he started to calm down a little bit. We chatted for a little bit more. I let him hang out for a little bit, and then eventually he makes his way into the store. And again, I got to make sure I'm not like jumping too fast and leaving parts out. But he makes it into the store, and then comes through, is drawn to different items and different things. I don't know if you want to jump in on this part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'll jump in quickly to clarify a little bit. So it wasn't this individual, it wasn't convulsions. It could, like some of the movements, yes, may have been like that, but it was more of uh, his body contorting. Um,
Better.
it was, oh, what's the word? He wasn't doing the movements. It was like something else was contorting his body and it looked very painful. So I know I don't want to put too much out there or give it a name or anything, but I know that all of us have seen individuals do this, unfortunately, because that is the world around us. Um, and some people would have said he looked like he was probably possessed.
Hmm.
So unfortunately, when he made it in, I was just like, wow, how did he even get into our parking lot? Because we have a bit of a threshold here. Like things just don't come to mystical wares for because we have a big giant love bubble around us. We have love bubbles all over the place here.
Hmm.
But it really does have an effect with what comes into mystical wares and this being, well, that day was a fair day. So a lot of energy here, a lot of energy workers and healers. So it was very not typical or not something that this individual would have made it into the parking lot. So it was like, oh, well, somebody drove him in. So he was just basically dragged in here. But then after Derek was able to talk to him in the parking lot and, send some love energy and to help him out, then he made his way on his own account into the store. So I was like, oh, good, because it's like with some people, not all of them are wanting help. So it's like we have all these different aspects to ourselves. So maybe parts of him were wanting the help. Yes, definitely parts of him definitely wanted the help, but then other things that were forcing his body to contort, that was the painful stuff that it was, obvious to see. And it's sad and unfortunate, but yeah, he made it in and he was throwing some symbols up at,
Oh yeah, that's right.
but not on purpose. So it was interesting to see.
Yeah, there's lots of ways of describing this, so I can go, full metaphysical here and let you know that he had a group of out of alignment entities. I'll just call them negative entities just for, the ease of discussion here. Negative entities, even to him, because they were not in alignment with him. So for those who know me, we call it armoring process, where we can visualize a person in a soccer ball shape or a buckyball and imagine or, see and feel the love frequency within it. So we're setting in the environment is long story short. So that's how you can get an energy removal. And that's what I did out there was kind of put him in that armored love bubble, which did not allow those frequencies or entities out of alignment with him to be around him. And that's what gave him that breather. So long story short, then he can make it in mystical wares for more of an energy removal, being around all this Shungite and love energy and other customers and vendors here with good intentions. All that matters. That all plays a part. It's frequencies. So those had a big effect on him. And when she's talking to, he was throwing his hands in different, and I'm not going to do certain shapes and symbols and things, but it's all from the attachment he had, is what it was. So, and they will be back. So I talked to the two individuals that brought him in, and they were pretty excited to see that he even made it inside and the changes. So they'll be back for a session, as they mentioned, and we'll get more into it. But it was just, again, we're bringing it up so you get the idea that energies do matter and so do locations. So what Julissa was alluding to as well when we were saying, I was kind of surprised he made it in the parking lot. So on the metaphysical level, we literally keep the physical property lines within that buckyball shape filled with love, made of our intentions and feelings. So yes, just entering the facility or the parking lot outside the building itself, you're going to get blasted by some love energy. And you're going to, feel it to one level or another. And then you can kind of think of it as an energy removal or just, setting the environment. Our intention is love. So whatever's not in alignment with that frequency doesn't stay. And there's different levels of that. So then once you enter the store, you get a whole nother blast. And you can ask just about any customer. They'll pause on not just their first time here, but usually consecutive times, pause at the entrance as they enter. Oh my gosh, the feeling is amazing. Or, one spin of that term. It is a highly energy active place. And again, we have the intentional love energy. So no, it was good experience.
Oh yeah,
Interesting.
definitely a good experience because
Hmm.
it, yeah, there's a lot that happened.
Yeah, and a lot we can't get into. Some of it for privacy reasons, some for just maybe it'll take an hour just to explain. But so we want to get the gist across of what we can of some of these experiences and talk about them. And again, if we're open to questions in chat, if you have any, I understand this can be listened to later in the archives. But if you're here live, feel free to ask questions, and we'll try to elaborate where we can. And we still have just looks like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes or so until we do an intermission. And we're just going to take like a 5-minute intermission. So you'll see a new screen come up, but we're coming right back because it is going to be approximately a 2-hour show today. Because I think we have a list of other topics to talk about.
Yeah, but I'm still so happy that that individual made it in because I mean, there's help for everyone, and I know it's easier said than done to receive, and then to also completely change can be scary. So
Oh yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's difficult too because what I was trying to say. So when you see individuals like this or others, and sometimes they'll apply 3D terms to them like schizophrenia or what I mean, go on and on. There's lots of names and terms. Well, let's use that example. When someone uses that term, they're saying someone's hearing voices. Well, I'll tell you, there are voices. So it's not just all in their head. There are entities that are out of our visual spectrum. So we'd call them invisible. Lots of ways of describing it. But there are entities out there. So these people often are hearing actual voices. Just because, again, they're not in our physical reality right here doesn't mean they're not real. And the answer is not always a chemical to fix it, it's an energy fix. And that's what this individual experienced on that day and will again in the future because it's all energy. It's an energy issue, not a chemical issue. So prescription drugs aren't always the answer.
man, I wish it was so much easier to talk about. Like now, it just seems so freeing to be able to be ourselves and talk about things that people don't normally talk about.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I have conversations in my head all the time. I would have never said that before. Like, no, what are you talking about? I don't talk to myself.
Oh, sure. No, I understand. Yeah. You think, oh, man, if somebody had heard me say that, or
Yeah.
I'm sitting here talking about invisible beings and this, that, and the other. I know how crazy it sounds. But I had to get way over that, or I'm just not able to communicate honestly. And it is what it is now. So
Yeah, we
no,
definitely wouldn't be here
no, just
if we still had those hesitations or things holding us back. So,
no. And you still even see us pulling punches or comments or statements during these podcasts sometimes, or in person even. Sometimes for privacy, or just sometimes because it's too big a thing to talk about. We don't have it within our English language to even, comprehend. So it's tough sometimes. So we're trying.
yeah, no, so I'm so thankful for this community, for the people around us, like-minded individuals coming together and holding space and in love frequency for each other, because we all need to help each other through this. So should
Absolutely.
we?
I think we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to mute the mics, I hope, and I'm going to put the intermission screen up. So we'll take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we will check the chat room for those that are in there. So if you have any questions, feel free. Um, and we'll be back for the second half of Metaphysical Perspectives very soon.
Mute off.
And welcome back to Metaphysical Perspectives Podcast. Hopefully, both our audios are working. And we'll
Yeah,
just jump right back in if we.
I don't know. This mic beeped at me and said mute was off, so I'm not used to all these techie things talking to me.
I guess somebody in chat will let us know if they can't hear us.
No, I'm the type of person that like I see cameras up and I'm like I start making faces at it, depending on my mood. Like sometimes if I'm happy or whatever, I'll just like blow it a kiss.
Oh,
I know there's other people like that out there.
I was going to say, they good or
I'm
bad faces? I
I'm
mean,
not
should
the
we
only one.
worry?
Sometimes I flip it off
Oh,
because that depends on my mood.
she'll try not to do that, everyone, during the podcast, but there's no
Uh,
guarantees.
oh, all these electronics that talk to us now. I'm like, I don't want to have conversations with them.
Always being watched. Actually, during when we were on the podcast, and what you can't see here on my screen, I'm pointing at here is all the devices, even the cameras we have on us and microphones you see on us now. They're all recording audio, even the cameras. So I have like 6 audio sources being fed into here that I didn't even know was listening to us. So it's a little frustrating from the techie perspective.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Um, so there's some comments quickly about SpaceX. SpaceX is developing a low latency broadband internet system to meet the needs of consumers across the globe, enabled by a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites. Starlink will provide fast, reliable internet to populations with little or no connectivity. I feel like I'm reading a
That's
commercial.
a cut and paste from their web, which is fine
Yeah.
because that's just they're providing, when we're sitting. Well, that's going to be their front thing they're doing. It's not all they're doing.
Yeah, all this monitoring, and I just approved your comment, toker. 1984 comment there.
Oh, do we have to approve certain comments within chat? Is that what's going on?
Apparently, but I didn't know like from my account that I could do that, but I just did.
Oh,
So,
who knows? Hmm.
so I guess going back to some of the things that have happened here. Ooh, I had a couple of aura readings, I think.
Oh, let's get into
Uh,
those. Explain the aura though, so they the machine and
So we have a Aura machine that's a computer. You put your hand on the sensor and it shows you real-time biofeedback of what your energy looks like based off the 7 major chakras. We have more chakras than that, but that's, the ones that this program runs off of. So you're in front of a camera and it shows you on a monitor like what your colors look like based off the reading from your hand. So it's actually really cool information and it's pretty darn accurate as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
So me over here with all these techie things and I'm just like, I was like, I don't like machines knowing so much about us, but it's but it's cool and it's really great tangible evidence to see. Like we already know what things make us feel, but to be able to see what that feeling looks like too is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool visual representation of your aura using a whole biofeedback device. Of course, the biofeedback device gets all kinds of sensors within it and readings and lots of stuff going on there. And then you get again a live video representation on screen that Julissa will sit there and talk to you. And while she's doing it, she'll sometimes, and she'll get into the story or whatever the exact stories are on this one, get people to think about certain things or distract them and get their emotions heightened or energy centers active. And you'll see it all live in real time on the screen. So it's a lot of fun to do, actually.
Yeah, so it's always different for everyone. No two auras are going to be the same. Like they might have like, it gives you like a personality profile, which is really cool based off of the snapshot in time because you can change it too. Like it can be pretty extreme change during the reading, which is cool. So I had a person that came in and it's like I've said a gazillion times now, like I always have techie stuff go on. So when I'm doing this aura or any aura readings, I'm like, "Ugh, please just work. Please don't give me any headaches. Because I'll have like either one of the windows in the program not open up, or I'll have printer issues, or something's not working. I'm like, every time I'm like, please just work so that we can get this aura going. And it's always it's an energy thing. It's not it's a techie thing, but it's not a techie thing. It's an energy thing. So I had this person come in and she was really sweet, but right when we start doing the reading, one of the windows just moved. So the screen, so we have 4 different windows open on our screen, and they are showing us different graphs. And one of them just like moved across the screen. I'm like, I didn't use my mouse to like click on it to
That
move
was
it.
during the session.
It was like right at the beginning.
Yeah, okay.
And then it didn't just, it moved, but then it also blacked out my screen. I'm like, all the techie issues that I've had with that thing, it's never done that. And so I'm just like, well, that's interesting. It must be you. And she just like started laughing. And I explained all the techie things that seem to happen around here and with the aura reading. And she laughed and she said that she has a friend that when they're on the phone, they always end up having like interruptions, like the phone call gets dropped. And there's been other like energy stuff with her tech, her monitors or whatever equipment she has, that she has things happen to. And I'm like, oh, so I guess it's just extra confirmation and proof for her to see those things happen, that it's not, well, it is kind of a her thing too.
Yeah,
I know it was a me thing too,
yeah.
but that was a
Oh
her
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I was
Yeah,
like,
and
yeah,
then you two together,
yeah.
and
So,
then start to get frustrated.
but no, we were just laughing about it because it's like, okay, well, let's move on. And then we were able to finish that reading. So that was great to see. And to explain more that was happening during that session. But then there was another session that I had. And so normally when somebody sits down and if they're like meditated or like they're in their spiritualness and they're just hanging out, they're feeling the vibe, they put their hand down on the sensor. It's usually the higher chakras that are showing. So like the purples, the blues, sometimes the greens, higher up showing in color. So this person sat down and it was the upper chakras the whole time. And I'm like, okay, once I start talking to them and they start processing the information, it quickly jumps to like a solar plexus, so yellow and greens and whatever else it is that they're feeling. So this person, I'm like sitting there talking to them, getting to like analyze themselves on the graph that I'm helping to explain, and it's still purples and blues. And I'm like, that's not usually how it happens. When you start explaining the colors jump. And it's like, no, purples and blues. And they're shifting in the colors, like where it was at around them. But I was like, huh. And I start talking. I'm like, well, that's interesting that you're able to keep in you're feeling the energies and not. So she was analyzing and using logic to process the
Staying more
information.
emotional than analytical.
Yes. So I was like, huh. And it was just like I was trying really hard to get her to jump into a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
color and it wouldn't. And I was like, okay. And so I'm like, oh. And she's like, oh, must be because my flipped heart. And I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh, a flipped heart. I'm like, her heart, our hearts are on our left side of the body. Some people have their organs on another part of their body. And so hers is on the right side. So like, oh, that was interesting. Can you
That is
help a little?
interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's well, the biofeedback device and the way it was set up to read energies, it's expecting to see them a certain way.
Hmm.
So when something's off, of course, it's going to go through, physical 3D sensors and whatnot, and just give it a different reading. That's interesting to hear. I'm glad you mentioned that too. So now we know that it can be perceived differently. I never got in front of her, did I?
No.
Oh, well, let me know if she comes back in. And so maybe I can get a visual and then perceive it, think with third eye, and then see what the energies of her aura is doing and see if there's something different there if I get to see her. But oh, yeah, that makes sense as far as I mean, I can remote and I can see what's going on now. It's not like the energy is all of a sudden reversed because it's moved over, but it definitely is affected differently, being on the opposite side of what we would call, your Kundalini and different things, because then that's a chakra. Of course, our physical nerve accumulations are physical chakras. There's etheric ones as well. Your heart is one of them, and that being moved, I mean, of course, is going to have an effect on things.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have been there that day, or at least in the room when that was happening. That would
I
have been
can't,
interesting.
that might have been a fair day too. I'm
Hmm.
not sure. I don't quite remember the day,
Hmm.
but you just had to say that word,
Which one?
Kundalini. So
Oh,
we've been having talks about how words have been taken and distorted. So I'm just like, "Ah, we got to find another word for that.
no, that's a good point.
It's
Yeah.
been
So
taken over.
energy center or energy
Wait, I
pathways.
haven't come up with it yet, or we
Yeah.
haven't.
What we're alluding to here, some of these terms we use have been what would it be obfuscated, I'm not sure that word's right, taken, used by other groups and then distorted. That was a good
Hmm.
term too. So we're just trying to be real careful with our wording where we realize it. So that's all we're kind of getting at
Yeah.
here.
Oh, but going back to the flipped heart, sorry.
Hmm.
Just like,
Sure.
the flipped heart. So I don't know if you've done this with anybody. Has anyone asked to use their left hand on the sensor with you?
Never,
Never? Okay,
never.
I've had a few people ask that. So
And they asked.
they ask like, "Oh,
Okay.
will it still show the same?" And
Okay.
usually no. And it's usually it starts off being the higher chakras, the more intuitive feeling energy
Okay.
on their left side, and then the right side turns more to the analytical side.
Interesting. Okay. I do
Um,
find also that energy workers, the ones that are acknowledged energy workers, and that's I'm encompassing a whole lot of individuals that way because technically we all are, but the ones that identify themselves as an energy worker, a Reiki master, a healer, a psychic, or something like that, um, I definitely see differences because and we'll have again we'll just use the terms where most of us are familiar with chakras and whatnot. And we often think of the seven chakras from like red to an indigo color. There's chakra points on the palm of your hand. There's one on the roof of your mouth, your fingertips. And what I'm getting at is when they're putting their hands, when they've consciously moved energy through their fingers more, you get a different energy sensation. And
oh, interesting.
yeah, so it's something to think about as well when you're doing the biofeedback device. So if they've worked that muscle, chakra points on their hands, there's going to be a whole lot more energy flow. So they'll tend to shoot out of the higher chakras faster into lower ones. Doesn't mean they're not metaphysically attuned or inclined or anything. It just means the energy is moving faster. I mean, so just different. Something to think about is all.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
I haven't looked at that closely. But yeah, so typically when people have asked, because I don't usually encourage, because it's like, okay, we're in this world. Most people are right-handed, where um, they say that our right side is uh, our masculine energy, our left side is our feminine energy, or the left side is receiving energy, the right side is sending energy. And so I'm like, when people have asked and they've actually done that, it shows that. So
It's kind of that way with me. And I had never given it thought before. So when I do my energy work, I hold my hands a certain way. And I know I got to watch that. Yeah. And that makes sense. Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
I'm
so
not assuming for a second everybody's the same. And actually, during these broadcasts, when I hold my hand up once in a while, I'm holding a piece of Shungite in this hand. I'm staying grounded or earthed the entire time. So then, because I tend to fling my hands a lot during these shows, so I'm trying to be aware of that.
oh,
And
I fidget.
yeah, yeah, I'm trying to limit flinging energies at the camera and whatnot as well. Too many distractions. Anything else on our list of?
um, yeah, but oh, something with else with that flipped heart. So then
Mhm.
if our heart is already on her left side and then her heart's on her right side, on her dominant masculine side, and like how that's just changed the energy. I don't
I,
know.
no, that's interesting to think about, and that'd be interesting to see if we had two different people and somebody sending energies.
Hmm.
Perceive how that maybe looked different,
Yeah.
felt different.
Um, so we've had quite a few like Tibetan things come up.
A lot,
Hmm.
and we're not like seeking it
Yeah.
out. I'll let you kind of
Well,
lead in.
first, our friend was here one day, and I don't even know how the discussion started, but we were standing, we have a giant clear quartz sphere, and it has since moved from where it was when we had the conversation took place. But Derek was across the table. I was on the other side. Our friend was on side from me, so we're like a triangle standing
It's an
in a
actual crystal ball, so a clear
yeah.
quartz sphere that's I don't know,
And
a foot across. It's a big one.
yeah, but so I had my hands on it, and we were all just chatting about I don't know what, and then somehow Tibetan stuff came up, and monks. This
Oh,
was
geez,
that before the singing bowl even got here?
I
I think it
think
was.
so. I
Yeah, we
think it
hadn't even
was.
gotten that bowl.
Mhm.
Huh? Maybe we were calling the bowl the bowl here.
I know, maybe we're talking, and then the picture is still below me here on screen. A big 3 foot tall Tibetan singing bowl made of brass. Is what we're talking about, sitting there in that image below me.
So Derek will have to talk a little bit more about what the conversation entailed because it does have a story. Yes, I'll remind you.
Okay, I'm like, oh no, you put me on the spot.
But as we're standing there in a triangle, and I have my hands on the sphere, and then Derek like ended up putting his hands on the spheres too. And the conversation, it was like the hairs on my face were like standing up. I felt like staticky, and I'm like, whoa, but like not the hairs on my head, because like this is pretty obvious when this gets staticky.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it would be.
But it was like my facial hairs. I was like, whoa, I feel really staticky, but weird right now. And I'm like, oh, we're just getting extra heightened, I guess. And um, they started talking about what is done in mummification, maybe. Does that ring a bell? And then how you have that special little
Oh, yeah. What aspects of that did you want to get into?
um
I have a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and it's like, boom, turn your head. There's another one, and some of these tie together, so it's hard to keep me on track sometimes.
well, how
Of
things were, I guess, blessed and created. I guess I don't really have anything, but that it entailed that little.
oh yeah,
Did you
yeah,
move
there
it?
it's back
Okay.
there. Do we want to get into that discussion?
Do you?
Probably not right now.
Probably not.
We're sorry. We're doing. We're sorry, everyone. Like, what are they talking about? It'll come back through in a future.
Sorry.
Sorry, we had a disruption here in the store. But we'll bring these topics back through that we're alluding to and not really talking about in the future when we have more parts and pieces and terms we can use, if that makes sense. So when it's going to be better. But we can keep going with the Tibetan stuff if you want.
I guess we had a
I know
big
I almost said
interruption
nothing.
to not to not talk.
I guess that that interruption was supposed to be, and I don't know if any of that audio came
Uh,
through. It's just music in the store got turned up really loud. Somebody got excited over a certain song out there. Good for them. Excitement, love.
um, well, I guess we can kind of go around the conversation and say, based on like what we're talking about, heightened environment, having a big crystal ball in between us, and we weren't even trying to do anything. We were just chatting and having conversation about stuff and how, well, now after that, we have a big singing bowl here at Mystical Wares. And
Mhm.
that's been blessed. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can do that. And again,
Yeah. Is it Tibetan?
well. Let me think about the story. Again, we're talking about the singing bowl that you see here in the image under me. It's really large, and you can actually stand in it. And I'll explain some of that. I picked it up at the recent, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, Tucson, Arizona Rock and Gem Crystal shows. There's multiple of them happening, multiple shows. At one of them, I was there and came across some individuals from India, and they had various items and different types of music instruments and singing bowls in this case. So I saw this really large one that's about a 3 foot diameter across, or not diameter, but well, I guess it would be across. Um, and it comes with a really large, heavy weighted, I'm not sure what they're called, a beater or not a gong, but the device, the tool to strike it with. So basically, it's such a large bowl that again you can stand in it. And when I was there with this person that had him available in Tucson, he was another energy worker as well, not dissimilar from myself. So we connected really quickly and started talking energies, and he knew that it would be not lost on me on the energies put into these bowls. So again, I'm still talking about that brass bowl that you see in the image, and so he opened up his cell phone, showed me a little video he had of just how these things were made. And what he showed me was a video of, I don't know, it was about four individuals with large hammers. And it looked like it looked like a cavern. I don't know for sure if it was. I didn't really ask him, but it was like mud or dirt or rock walls. So it felt like it was underground kind of thing. It was definitely secluded, and they had a huge brick oven inside of there. So these individuals would then, of course, use this large oven for heating up the bowl so they'd be more malleable. And then they'd set it in between them with large hammers and just take turns rotating through, hammering the large singing bowls into their shape. And in the case of this one that's such thick brass, it was a whole lot of effort and energy. And as the camera kind of panned over, and he wouldn't let me have a copy of the video for a lot of reasons. Of course, there's a very sacred space and a lot of stuff going on. And what I'm getting at here is as he panned to the right, there were 6 Tibetan monks sitting on the ground, not 10 feet from the singing bowl. I'm pointing that out here. It's just outside our office, this wall. And they were chanting different prayers, and they had prayer beads, and they had the prayer beads covered up with different I don't know if it'd be called a sash, but pieces of cloth, so you couldn't see exactly the numbers and the way they were doing it. And there was more to that. I'm just going to kind of go through it. So they're trying to keep that as private as they can. But they 100% went through every effort of, because it's not lost on this group, of course, the energy and the frequency being available in this environment while these bowls are being made. So it was really interesting to get to actually see, and I could feel the energy, yes, from the video on this person's cell phone, while the monks were chanting and the individuals were taking turns hitting the bowl to form it such. So it was just a phenomenal experience to witness and to experience energetically. So it was, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was really cool. And then after receiving that, we had a friend here, another friend, who ended up gifting you a very special crystal. That,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. And I forget, I got to remember that the Tibetan again. We'll put as much as we can now, just leave names out. But a very interesting individual that came in, and we've chatted a few times about several things. But I was also gifted a small crystal, a little tiny quartz. Usually, I had it here a little bit closer. I don't have it now to show you, but just a little tiny guy that had actually been placed in it was in Egypt in the is it I guess it'd be the Giza is how you'd pronounce it. I'm trying to watch my pronunciations here. In the Queen's Chamber. So long story short, of course, crystals are uh, programmable energetically with frequencies and environments. So this certain crystal, and along with others of them, were taken in the Queen's Chambers at a certain time of the year because, of course, environmental energies and um, we'll just call it solar energies, planetary alignments, all of that has an effect on everything and anything. So it was done in the right situation. So I was gifted that as well. And I'm trying to remember
I missed a lot of
I
it.
know
I
that,
got pulled.
yeah, and
I
on
was,
when these things happen, and this one happened during one of our metaphysical fairs, sometimes I'll literally turn around. There's another person in front of me, and I'm talking to them. So it's hard to hold on to all of this, the specific 3D details. The energy details aren't lost, and it's not random items that are just kind of shoved in my hand. They're very energetically powerful, synchronistic, meant to be. Again, in this case, Tibetan ties. Um, the so it's yeah, I got to leave some of that vague.
no, but it was very special, and thank you for the gift because, of course, it gets into Derek's hands, but it's not when somebody's gifted to him. It's like not everybody's going to see it or even hold it or touch it or anything, but it's that love and that energy is shared with Mystic Awares community.
Yeah, and there, again, all frequencies. So if you talk about it from just the energy aspect, that frequency has now been shared with mystical wares and here. So now it's another additional frequency to pull from for those that need it. It's not that all of a sudden we get handed these different items or whatnot, and everybody, has to hold them in their hands and they're for everybody. Nah, there's, we're all different and at different times. So it's an additional frequency or ingredient in this environment that we can work with and those that need it. So it's awesome to see too.
Can you talk about the gift that you received, the other one? Like how you got that? I don't know. Not like how it came to be,
Okay,
but how you
sure,
received it.
okay.
Okay.
Hmm. That's gonna be our. I'll get as specific as I can, but we're talking about is another very special crystal. So I'll get into it a little bit. It's now a couple of years I've had it. So, and again, I'm going to be loose with my terms here, so please don't hold me too much to them. But I'm just going to call them Chinese mystics. So there's a group in China of their metaphysically, and these are my terms, inclined individuals that are their spiritual leaders and whatnot. And again, work with me on this description here, but is told in their stories and history that when their spiritual teachers or gurus or masters, as they're sometimes called, reach certain levels of enlightenment in their understandings, and they pass on, they cremate the body. And if they were able to hold such a frequency, when you move, and I'm going to get really fast here, move away the ashes, they find a little crystal, and it's a completely, basically round, so it looks spherical. So round, it's really, really small. So maybe an eighth of an inch across. So small, you can pick it up. So maybe the size of a pea. So, and they come in different colors, and there's only so many of these. Um, so an individual attached to that group In fact, this piece of shungite I've been sitting here holding is a piece of cosmic silver shungite that I tumble in pure silver, just hundreds of little silver bars for 3 days in a hexagon tumbler. And we'll put more of that out later, but there's a whole energy science behind that as well. And so, very special shungite nuggets. And this individual, and these are all energy healers. So, this individual, who happens to be located down in Los Angeles, California, had been gifted one of these cosmic silver shungite nuggets that we make here, knew how important it was. So, long story short, this group that he's connected to of Chinese elders, I believe he turned them to me, brought this little tiny crystal that was pulled from the ashes of a cremated, I guess, spiritual leader of theirs, brought in. And in their stories, they're told if this crystal gets in the right frequencies, and they were basically implying individuals that can hold certain frequencies or energies, and then the crystal will duplicate or others will form out of it. So what they did was put this, and it's a little tiny glass jar with a little crystal in it, on top of a piece of cosmic silver shungite that we had made here. And to everybody's surprise, the next day I'd gotten contacted online. That little crystal split into overnight, split into 5 additional crystals. So, and they were all different colors, all the same size. So it's not like it broke into, one piece into 5, different pieces. They were all the same size, although different colors. So I was actually gifted one of these crystals because of where the cosmic silver shungite had been created and through. So I have one of them here in our office. It changes colors. It actually, when you put it in your hand, again, it's a really small thing. You can hold it, and it'll just vibrate in your hand right there. It hasn't the one I've been gifted, and as I was told, I'm the only one in the United States that has one of these. They're not really. Actually, they specifically said they're not supposed to be, gifted out. But this was such an unusual circumstance because they knew, and it was the only time this group had ever seen this happen. By the way, so it was in their stories or lore. I'm not trying to say that. That this would happen in the right frequencies, and when it did, that's why it was such a big deal. I was gifted one. So again, I'm bringing this up, or Julissa wanted me to talk about it a little bit, kind of vaguely, because it's a very unusual frequency or energy that it holds. And again, it's not that when you have all these energies, you get saturated with everything. You get what's in alignment with you. So you get what you need, is what my point is. So that was a really unusual story. I know I was vague on a lot of it, but it's hard to talk about. We may have some questions in chat there.
Yeah, I have them.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead then.
I was trying to let you talk.
Yeah.
No, but the reason why that even got brought up, so this is like come full circle,
Mhm.
and it will probably continue to go eventually, but it started with that conversation with our friend at the quartz sphere, and it was him bringing up some sort of, I don't know how we got into talking about it, but he was talking about mummification.
I don't remember how
And
that.
then he was going on, and then like everything started standing up, like when the hairs on my face were like standing up, and I just like felt. I know I got a lot of hairs, huh?
I said,
But
good
it's
thing you
like
don't have
my
whiskers
peach
like
fuzz,
me.
like my peach fuzz. And we all have it. It's okay. Um, but like, no, it was just really interesting to have that happen, and then in that conversation, I brought it up to you. I'm like, oh, does Colin know about that? And then we got the singing bowl, and then you got the crystal.
Yeah,
So
the
this all.
synchronicities, the how everything lines. It's not random. Oh yeah, exactly. And then the crystal, and it's not like we say the word Tibet or Tibetan around here every day or anything like that. It's just, but when they line up, and this happens to all of us. Pay attention. Synchronicities, your spider senses might go off. There's more to the story, is the point. And maybe it was so that somebody in chat here or listening to this podcast later has that aha moment and it means something to them. And we'll elaborate on a lot of this later where we can too.
Yeah,
Um,
so Brian in chat commented, from what I know, Tibet is a key point in this realm. Higher-minded people there. They live in love, sharing love with all.
oh, that's
Mhm.
accurate. Sounds accurate. And then it's not lost to me also that a portion of that frequencies were shared with this place. Mystical Wares a store. And for everybody, for all of us, not any one person. So that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone that has gifted those
Absolutely.
things and
Hmm.
shared them with Derek, because then it gets shared with community. So, um, so I will have to jump back to Lauren's question. But back to Brian, he's asking, do you plan on imprinting crystals with the Scalar device?
Great question, Brian. We are, and we have some of that information on mysticalwares.com's website. We have a new Scalar Energy tab, and on that tab, on that page, there's going to be a lot more information. And I do talk a little bit about imprinting. Because let me grab a piece of it here. So we do have a new Scalar device, and this is the Generator X, or the program running portion of it, to where you can download certain rife frequencies and run what's called a program, and you sit within this field, and it can be remote or in person, um, and then run the frequencies through it. So yes, we will be doing that, sir. The crystals. So yes, you can bring in, and on the same machine, you're not seeing the actual Scalar device here, but it's two like suitcase devices, and there's certain antennas and stuff going on. We can imprint a glass of water, a crystal, anything else. Everything is programmable with frequencies. So you can either send, if you're remote, in a different area, not Washington, send Mystical Wares an item, and we'll have that option available on the website soon, to where you can send us something and we'll imprint certain frequencies, send it back to you, or if you're in person, bring it in, and it will literally hold those frequencies, making them available for you later. So yes, we're doing that. And there is a RIFE, R-I-F-E, I'm saying, frequency list available on the website, on those pages that you can look through. And there's thousands and thousands of ailments or supplements or frequencies to choose from. So yes, that is available.
Um, so Lauren had a question. I lost it. Where is it? You were talking about Sasquatch, and I was interested if either of you wanted to touch on elementals, especially if you're out in the deep woods.
Oh yeah, I've had lots of experiences with, and I'm loose with my terms, elementals or nature spirits, and so I don't know where we want to go on that. We can ask. So when I'm out there communicating with Sasquatch, and I've had interactions with Sasquatch or Bigfoot in physical form here in this reality, as well as what we'll call etheric, or astral form, etheric form. Again, I don't get too set on my terms here. But I've had both interactions, and they're a people. They're not an animal. I mean, I guess, heck, we're more of just an animal than they are. So, but the elementals or nature spirits, they're straight up what they call little fairy-like creatures floating around out there, and we can see them. Depending on how heightened you are energetically and your levels of perception, I can walk out there and see just when I initially go, I'll see little flashes of light, and then if I slow down and just calm down and what I call turn on my levels of perception, you can actually see them, and they look like literally like little fairy-like creatures. And they speak. They're conscious beings. They're out there. Heck, the plants can speak. And I learned that I don't know how many years ago in the redwood forest of California, walking up, wrapping my arms around a big old redwood tree, just sharing love, and it started speaking to me. Of course, telepathically, I wasn't expecting that, and I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my life and had a lot of experiences. And a 27-foot around, yes, a big one, just started, and it shot love energy through me. I actually started tearing up and crying, and I'm not a guy that walks around crying all the time, and definitely not admitting it. But and it's just love energy is what I'm saying here. So it welled me up with that love energy so much that I couldn't help it, regardless of who was around. So I get caught off guard myself too, and the nature entities, they're all over, out there in the forest and whatnot, especially near moving water. I, I guess energy, moving, flow, electrons, that whole thing. So if you go out in the forest and you find, little waterfalls and stuff like that, they tend to be around there a lot for whatever reason.
Yeah, all that good moving energy.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
what I
I mean,
figured it would be.
yeah, because if I would be drawn to anything like water, just because it does move the energy, the beach, the ocean, just
Yeah, sure. No, that
yeah.
makes sense.
So, um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about there's this day here in the store, and Derek was making fun of me, but
Which day?
I know which day. So, a while back, we got sick, or I got sick, and I don't want to put the word out, but it messed with my taste and smell. Like it wasn't completely gone, but it was definitely messed with, and it wasn't the same. It still isn't the same, but I can smell and taste, and I could at that time too. It was just so it was different, and I had to adjust. But one day we had somebody come into the store and they were looking for a specific rock. And I can't, I think she was calling it Presley Blue. And I was like,
Remember
oh,
that.
I hadn't heard of that before. And then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it looks like it's also called Stonehenge or Blue Stonehenge. And I was like, I knew that we had that on the floor. So I'm walking around with her trying to help her find the stones. And I couldn't find the bowl on the table. And I was like, oh, I know we have it, but maybe we have it in the towers. So take her over to the towers. And then here comes Olivia. She found the bowl. I'm like, oh, thank you. So I'm holding the bowl and I'm like, oh, here are the stones. And she's like, oh, great. She wanted a tumble and a tower, but she was looking for the stone, like after we found it and I'm holding on to it. She was like, I've been looking for this because I heard it helps with regaining your sense of smell.
And
And
that's the customer saying
a
that.
customer said it. And I was like, oh, how interesting. And I was like, yeah, here they are, and go ahead and take a look at them and pick what you want, but don't, no pressure into getting this now that you have that. And I don't know, just look it over. And so I left her to shop, and then I came back around, and there's the bowl, and I'm holding it, and I found Derek. I got pulled in a couple of different directions before I actually was able to put the bowl back down.
Hmm.
But later on, I was like, man, everybody stinks. I'm like, I can smell everything, everyone. Why is it that my smell is so heightened? Like I'm already, I guess, sensitive, fragrance.
Sensitive. Anybody who was here that day, don't take that comment personal, please. That everybody smells.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
not
could
what she meant.
like everything. I was like, I could smell everyone and everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh, what is wrong with me? And he starts laughing and he's like, who's the dummy that was walking around with that bowl of rocks?
I know. I'm like, come on, you're.
I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was funny.
There's something too. The stones, the frequencies, and all of that. Of course. And it's awesome when an example like that says enhances your sense of smell, or however it was termed. Um, actually line up to that, and then she doesn't know it, walks around, is all of a sudden heightened, and then puts one and one together and figures out it's two. Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty funny. But then speaking of that, because I was like, oh man, it was just like, and it wasn't that everybody stinks, but there actually is
No.
a good movie called Stink on Netflix that talks about,
Oh.
yeah,
Okay.
the fragrance industry and like
Oh, a
our,
documentary or
yeah,
something.
yeah, it's a documentary, but it's called a movie on there.
All right.
I don't know, but yeah, it's called Stink Movie on Netflix.
I don't think I've seen that one. Okay.
No,
I'm gonna
it's
have to look
really
it up.
good. But it talks about like our fabrics and like I am
Oh.
very sensitive to smells. So like when I buy clothes, some dyes have like are too strong or they don't just smell like a dye. It smells like something else has been added to it, especially with children's clothes. And this is before I had watched that movie, but I'm like, "Ugh, why do these smell weird or why am I like picking up on something? I'm like, why isn't anybody else like noticing this around me? Like, um, but turns out that like a lot of our clothes, especially children's clothes, have flame retardants in them as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, or they're scented. Like, why do our clothes need like?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but in the movie, I haven't watched it in a really long time because this is something that came up after, I became a mom and things started like coming into my awareness more that I, didn't have to deal with before. So, taking care of the littles and start paying more attention to what's getting into their hands on their skin and
No, that
yeah,
all matters. All the chemicals, the scents, your laundry detergent, everything you touch. I mean, no, it makes a difference.
yeah, but how it affects us, like neurological conditions, and that we don't even know it, just like our foods and dyes and um, substances that we don't need.
No, absolutely. All the additives, all the stuff in your deodorants, your shampoos, conditioners, laundry, all that stuff. Yeah, we got to go OCD and watch it nowadays.
Yeah, but then also try not to go OCD because then it's like everything's out to get me.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
don't go into fear over it, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, be aware, and also don't kick yourself if all of a sudden, you got to, use something or other. And but yeah, it's a percentage thing is the way I see it.
exactly. Yeah, balance.
Yep,
So
exactly.
there's a comment. I'm gonna mess this up. I was learning Tolkien's Lord of the Ring elven language, Tangor, and that night two fairies showed up in my dreams. Thought that was cool to see an elemental. That's from Yenny Yen in chat.
It's actually kind of cool. So that running off of that comment or playing off of it, when you in these movies, when something enters your understanding or imagination, whatever your reality, well, then you can start perceiving it more, and you may do that. So that could be what's happening there. You realize, oh, that's a thing. And by the way, if you can imagine it, it exists. That's the way it works. So there's no imagination and then reality. No, it's all the same, just different visual spectrums or frequencies or dimensions, call it whatever you want, but it's all real. So that's awesome to hear. And I've done similar things too, where you think about it, and all of a sudden you're connecting to that entity or energy, and then you get more information. So that makes total sense. That's cool.
Um, I guess speaking a little bit on nutrition, there was a day, I don't know if you remember, that kidneys kept popping up.
Kidneys
Kidneys, yeah.
happens a lot with me, so I don't remember the exact day.
Well, for me, like I haven't had any like kidney issues, but then it was like I was having pain in my kidneys. But I guess there was a day that someone shared on Facebook, someone was looking for a kidney transplant. And like, so my
Oh, that's
younger
right.
years, I had a really bad kidney infection. I was like, oh, but previous to that, I used to think, oh, why can't I be a donor? You know, I'm healthy. And then I ended up getting a kidney infection. I don't know. And I was like, oh, maybe that was a good idea. I didn't end up going that
Yeah,
route. um, but anyways, I started learning more about our bodies and kidneys are um, they help to balance fluids in our body. And so we're over 70% water, our kidneys, our environment's water and all this and how we're so dehydrated and we're not, I don't know, our bodies need more nutrition.
that's
So,
interesting you bring up kidneys too, because just here again, we're talking about the Scalar unit on this. I installed. I'm going to run it tonight on myself. A kidney detox
oh,
and lymphatic system one to try that and the frequency, so you can sit within the field and actually experience the detox and energies again remotely or whatnot. So
yeah, I guess I was bringing that up because I didn't really know why I was bringing that up too.
yeah, yeah. I'm just
So
pointing out synchronicities that
yeah,
yeah.
well, our phones are like little microwaves, so we're cooking
hmm
ourselves, and it's not just our phones; it's all this our technology that we use, and it's
And
just
even
a
keeping your phone in your back pocket. Some I'm not saying she does, but some of us do at times for whatever reason. It's something to think about. It's blasting frequencies. Go speakerphone where you can.
we're cooking ourselves.
Mhm.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you're not going to avoid it all anyway, so also don't go into fear over it. But then try and come back on the other side and stay as healthy as you can, diet wise, mind, body, and soul, and stay healthy to because there's always going to be drama out there.
but
Do we
I don't have too much more on our notes.
do we want to talk about any of the stuff coming up?
Yeah, so since Lauren had asked about Sasquatch, we do have some classes coming up, and that will be one. So I will get back to the calendar. So um, our next event, we have Michelle coming in on Sunday
hmm,
for aromatherapy class at 1 o'clock here at Mystical Wares. So she has Circle of Healing essential oils that she makes that are great, and we have them here in the store. And she comes and does classes ever so often. She's part of our fairs and helps people out.
I think some of those products are also on our online store if you're interested
Oh,
too.
yeah. So then that's Sunday with Michelle. And then next Thursday, we have a class here, healing, and we'll talk about different healing modalities and how we're able to do this because we always have people asking us how is it that we do what we do? How does Derek do what he does?
Yeah, we'll explain it from all different aspects, from energy, physical, emotional, because all those are connected, of course.
And then we have a fair next weekend, March 5th and 6th. So lots of different vendors. You can find all this information out on our website, mysticalwares.com. And on our homepage, if you scroll down, you'll see the calendar of events. And then we do also have a fair page where you'll see the different vendors that are signed up for the upcoming fair. So that's great. And then after that is when we'll have Derek will have his Sasquatch and Entities class where he'll go talk a little bit more about, or a lot more about different entities. So not just Sasquatch, things that he's encountered and a little bit more about why he sees them or why they come in, when they come in, where. And
Some tips and tricks on how you can do it too, because everybody can do these things to one degree or another, and it can all be enhanced. Again, with some what I'll just call tips and tricks. And there's always more to learn. So
Yeah, then after that, we have Drum Circle on March 13th. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I do want to give our next Metaphysical Perspectives podcast on the 17th. We'll have a special guest, Jampa, and they have some really great
Nice.
CBD products. And so, not just that, there's a lot more
Yeah, and
that
there are
will,
energy
yeah,
tools too when we're talking about Jump and their different products. There's a lot going on in that one, but no, it's all energy tools and
and energy people,
yep,
very
and energy
aware.
sensitive people. That's right. Yeah, yeah. So that should be interesting.
So, a
And
lot going on. Go visit our page so you can see all the stuff coming up and our different vendors coming in. We saw Ty in chat. Ty will be back on March
oh,
5th.
Ty L. Oh yeah, check him out on TikTok as well. TY-EL. Fantastic individual. Lots of stuff going on there. He's got lots of videos. Um, so we're gonna have lots of different people on in the future. We keep talking about it, so we're gonna still slot some of these guests for the future and get more video podcasts out as we can. And we're gonna try and make them a little more regular. But again, I come and go, and I do a lot of trips down to Arizona on buying trips. So we're doing what we can. So and then again, we're gonna keep enhancing. We'll do a as we work with the what I'm talking about is a scalar unit some more. Get some more information and feedback on that and insights. We'll do some other podcasts and talk about it and give some examples how to use it. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably round this one out and end it. But I appreciate you all being here. And again, if you can stay up to date on what's going on and the different events that Julissa was talking about at mysticalwares.com. And then we're going to keep expanding through there. And actually, on our Shungite FAQ page, soon we're going to have the Shungite beehives page kind of play off of that one. So I'm working and building that in the background. So we'll have some more information. And maybe here in the spring, we'll do some more bee chats as well. So for the interested beekeepers. Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thanks.